All right, so hey, once again, my name is Gabriel Vigil. I'm a teacher here in Southern California. My classroom management YouTube channel, the Classroom Manager Guy. Hey, please, if you have any questions, jump on this live. Feel free to jump in a moment and let me know if you have any questions. Beyond that, I'm just going to kind of talk about my day a little bit, and hopefully you get something from it. And yeah, once again, if you need anything, just let me know. But here we go. So today, I teach 8th grade United States history. So 8th grade United States history is what I teach. And the thing we're learning about right now, is the government. And so checks and balances, separation of power, all those things, 3 branches. And so the activity that we did today, which I've done with other things, it's called a breakout EDU. Now, I wish I was getting paid by these guys because I'm sure it'd be some nice money, but obviously I'm too small for that. But let me show you what the box looks like. And so that's kind of loud. Let me get another one. So I actually I got a grant. And it was a really nice grant, actually. I got a grant for this item here. And I bought 6 of these boxes. I bought the subscription. I bought everything else that goes along with it. And it's like an escape room in a box. You don't actually lock the kids in the room. What you do is you put a lock on this, like this right here, and it has like a little, I forgot the name of it, but then you attach some locks to it. And so the goal is for students to try to solve the riddles, to unlock the locks, to get into the box. And I started this last year, and I've been doing this job for 21 years, and so this is something new that I brought into my classroom. And I gotta tell you, man, I love this thing. I really do. And the best thing about it, it's a little expensive. I think I had my grant for $1,000, and with $1,000, I bought 6 boxes, and I bought the subscription to the website. But the best thing about it is it already has some games pre-made in there. And so you kind of type in what you're teaching, and then games are in there. So for example, today we're learning about checks and balances, and that's what our test is going to be about. And we kind of use this as a review for it. And there was like some riddles that had to do with that. So for example, there was this one document that talked about the executive order about the president, the powers they had. And then you use a little pen to kind of to mark certain letters, and then you have a black light, and the black light you shine on it, and it shows the things, and that and turns into be one of the combinations. So it's a very unique system, and I love how it just all comes together. But the best part about it, once again, I did something like this before, but what I did before was I created my digital version of it. But this is great. It's physical. The kids have it. There's things already pre-made in there, and it is just it's great. It is just really great. And so that is something I'm using currently right now. It's called Breakout EDU. So once again, hey, if anybody from the company is here, man, let me know. I would love to work with you because I love these things. So that's what I did today. Now the assignment I did last Friday and Thursday and Friday. Here's another assignment. And I love this one as well, but it's a lot more advanced. It's called constitutional search. And so what happens is students are given questions such as, how long is the term for a senator? That's the question. How long is the term for the senator? And so normal things, students would look it up and find it, right? And Google it, whatever else it is. But what is unique about this assignment is they have to provide evidence for that in the Constitution itself. And so what students will do is they actually will find the answer in the Constitution. And I think about this assignment, and this assignment, oh my gosh, this is college level stuff. I teach 8th grade, but this is college level stuff because the fact that they're, first of all, know the answer, that's one level where I have understanding. And the fact they're able to find the answer in the Constitution, that's another level thing. And the Constitution itself, that's some higher level of reading right there. And so the fact they're able to cite evidence using the Constitution to find, to explain their answer, wow, right? That is phenomenal. And so now I'll be honest with you, not all the students do well at that one because it is really high level stuff. But I'm glad to say probably half my students got a couple of those answers correct and were able to cite the evidence using the Constitution. So that's something I do last week as well. But those are 2 assignments that I use in my class every year. And that's one thing I wanted to talk about. is I'm not sure where you're at in your teaching career, but here's the nice thing about it. When you've been doing it as long as I have, you find out things. You find I guess the word is a cadence. A cadence is what you find. When you find this cadence in your class, especially when it comes to lesson planning, it makes your life so much easier. In fact, if you ever go to my YouTube channel, I created I think it's like a 2.5 hour video. I mean, I went to detail about how I lesson plan. So if you're ever looking for a resource on how to lesson plan in detail, find that. It's on my YouTube channel. It's like Lesson Planning Like a Pro. I forget the exact name of it, but I tell you exactly what I do. And I use a plug and play, I call it a plug and play system. And what that means is there are certain lessons that I do on almost every unit. So what I do is first of all, break down the unit itself. And so for most of my units, United States history, 8th grade history, they're about 2 to 3 weeks time frame. So I got a 2 or 3 week time frame. And then in those 2 to 3 weeks time frame, whatever I'm teaching, there are certain things I always do, plug and play system. So for example, I almost always start off my unit with ed puzzles, where students watch videos and answer questions. And then I almost always finish, well, I think almost always finish with some sort of test. So ed puzzle beginning, test at the end, plug and play system, boom, boom, first day, last day. And then almost everything I do in all my lessons have some sort of notes. All my units have notes in it, right? And how many notes, what it is, varies by thing. But let's say maybe I have 3-4 sets of notes that cover a certain unit, certain topic. Like for example, checks and balance. So Constitution, right? And so I think I had about 3 sets of notes that had to do with that. And so I plugged those in. So the 3 things I have so far that are just on every unit I do are ed puzzles, I have a test, then I have my notes. And then the 4th thing I always have is some sort of review, almost always have some sort of review right before the test. Now that review can be different things. It could be a booklet. Sometimes I do a booklet. It could be a worksheet. It could be what I did today, which was the breakout EDU, but it's usually some sort of review right before the test. And then somewhere sprinkled in there will be like another day for ed puzzles. But then here's the beauty of it. Once you've been doing this a long time, you got your system put in place, you got your cadence, you got your flow, you got certain things you always do. This is when you sprinkle in those special assignments, those special activities. So for example, constitutional search, that was a special activity I have. Going on to my next unit. My next unit is going to be Bill of Rights. I'm going to start off the same way. First day is going to be ed puzzles. Last day is going to be tests. And there's notes in between. And then it'll be a review right before. But an assignment, I actually have 2 special assignments, I guess you want to call them, activities for the Bill of Rights. One is going to be a court case where students have to identify the rights or what amendment goes along with the court case. So that's an activity. And then another activity I have specifically for the Bill of Rights would be we do a search. Once again, talking about the different amendments, search and seizures. Hopefully I say that right, search and seizures, right? I can never get that down perfectly. But that'll be another one. So we actually look through a real search warrant. We look through a search warrant, and then I kind of play it out like a mystery where students try to figure out what happened based upon the search warrant. And so that's another activity. And so when it comes time for lesson planning, if you can develop that cadence, develop that plug and play system. New teachers, I remember, oh my gosh, it's been forever, but I remember I would go in thinking, what am I doing today? What am I doing today? And every day would be a stress because I didn't know exactly what I'm doing from one day to the next. I would just kind of throwing things at the wall, hopefully something stuck, right? And so that's not what you want to do. You want to create a system. Be systematic about it and figure that certain things you're always going to do, and what changes is the content, right? You have certain things you're always going to do, but what changes is the content. And you put in those content, whatever you're doing, you mesh it to the content. And then through the years, what you're going to find out is this. You're going to be able to create this database, or the system of stuff that you can keep going back to over and over again. And then in addition to that, you're going to find certain activities that are going to work and not work. And this is the beauty of it. This is the beauty of teaching itself. We get a fresh start every year. So if something did not work in year 1, make a note of it, know what it is, and then go into year 2, you want to change it, right? As far as those activities goes. And as far as those certain plug and play things you always do, if it doesn't work for a certain unit, then you might want to switch it out. So for example, me, ed puzzles. If I started realizing ed puzzles were not working, then I would switch them out with something else. If I realized my notes were not working, then I switch them out for something else or do a different way of notes. So the idea is this, that you want to always constantly monitor what you're doing to see if it is working. If it is, keep it and then add to it each year. And of course, make changes where you need to make changes. But I'm telling you, if you get something like that down, it's going to be such a relief because you're always feeling overwhelmed with all the lesson planning. So find something that's going to work. Find something that's going to work that you can plug in and just keep going with it. Plug and play system, lesson planning. And once again, if you look through my YouTube channel, I'm telling you, there's one in there that's 2.5 hours. It goes in quite a bit of detail with that. That's there for you as a reference. And the last thing I want to mention regarding lesson planning is this. I was listening to a podcast this weekend, and they were talking about the importance of certain things in your classroom. Like if you're a new teacher, what should you focus on first? And almost everybody, and me included as well, I would say the most important thing you need to have in your class is that classroom management. Because without that, nothing else can happen. You can have the best lesson in the whole entire world, but if your classroom manager is not on point, then you're not going to be able to implement that lesson. So for me, the most important thing is classroom management, and almost everybody else says that. But this one lady I'm listening to on the podcast, she actually had an interesting point. And she said for her, the most important thing is lesson planning. And so my ears kind of perked up, lesson planning, wondering to see what her angle is on this. And here's what she explained. And to be honest with you, I agree with it. I still would classify as classroom management, but here's what she was mentioning. When you lesson plan, you want to think about every single part of that lesson. How is it going to be from the moment students walk in to the moment students are leaving? How is it going to be for that transition from maybe the warm-up to something else? Right? How's it? And her idea was that you want to plan for everything as far as lesson planning goes. And she says by doing that, you're going to eliminate some behavior issues that you might face otherwise. And I started thinking about that, and I agree 100%. Now, I still would classify that as classroom management, but that is something I would recommend. When it comes to managing your classroom, you want to think about every single step in that process. And in fact, I have a course on classroom management, and you want to go to my YouTube channel and somewhere in there in the links. In fact, I think it actually will be probably at the bottom of this description here once this uploads as a video. There's a free link for my classroom management course. But in there, one of the first things I do is I have a worksheet where you're supposed to go through it and try to define exactly what every single routine would look like in your class. How do you want every single moment in your class to look like? What does it look like when students walk in? What does it look like for the first 5 minutes? What does it look like when you're giving direct instruction, when there's transition, when kids are getting the pencil? And so I have people go through that just to really think about how every single second of the classroom is going to be. Now, with that said, just so you know, things don't always go as you plan. Rarely do they go as you plan. But the idea is you think about every single thing, how it's going to be. You have a benchmark to go to. You have something you're working towards. And so I'll give you an example how this really plays out in a classroom. If my lesson was to have students take notes on the 3 branches of government, and my lesson was students take notes on 3 branches of government. That's my lesson. There's so many little parts of that you can fine tune so that you can do it in a way where behavior problems will decrease. Because if my goal is just have students take notes and that is it, that alone kind of sets the stage for bad things to happen. So here's what I do in my classroom. The first thing I do is have students come in and have them do a warm-up. So before we even jump in to the entire notes themselves, I have them do a warm-up. And we practice at the beginning of the year. We practice our warm-up procedures. That's the first thing I really hammer in is our warm-up procedures. We spend about 4 days going over warm-up procedures. We practice our warm-ups. And I have certain warm-ups that they will see time and time again. I have a warm-up for definitions, a warm-up for reading maps, a warm-up for reading a timeline. And I think I have one more other warm-up in there once in a while. But those are like the 4 warm-ups that kids will see when they come to my class time and time and time again. I'm telling you, that consistency is more important than anything else. And so the lesson, even though it is, describing the 3 branches of government, they come into the classroom already knowing how to start off the class because we've gone over it time and time again. So the students come in and I have the instructions on the screen. I don't have to say a word. The students know exactly what to do. I'm standing by the door and then I have a timer going. So students walk in, I'm standing by the door, managing the energy. Let me get the light for you real fast. I am managing the energy as the students walking in. I'm making sure that whatever's going outside does not come inside of my classroom. And then I'm monitoring the classroom, making sure students are ready to go. The bell goes, ding. I basically make an announcement. All right, you got 1 minute to make sure you're sitting down and working. And then I just monitor. That minute goes, and then if there's any disruptions going on, people are still talking, and then I basically call it out. I say, hold on class, people are still talking, and I have a system put in place where I call it teacher versus student, where I'll make a mark on the board for me. And by making a mark on the board for me, it shows the students that they're not quite where they need to be at. And usually within 30 seconds of that, the class is in. So within a minute or 2, the class is quiet and working. That is all that goes into the first 2 minutes of class. So if I just said, all right, my lesson day is to have students take notes, I'm missing that whole entire part right there. That whole thing right there, the first 2 minutes of the class, sets the tone for the entire class. So when you're thinking about what you're doing lesson-wise, try to think about from the moment students come into class what you're going to do. And once again, my warm-ups, that is something built into the class. It is a routine. It's the same thing over and over. Students know what they do when they come in. There's no surprises. And so then that happens. I almost always give students about 8 minutes to work on the warm-up. That gives me plenty of time to do my attendance, to monitor the class, to take any phone calls, to deal with any kind of restroom issues, to deal with students coming in late. So all those things all that housekeeping stuff gives me time to do that. And then the timer goes off, ding, and then that's when I jump into my next thing. I don't go right into the lesson. I can do a quick announcement. Hey, here's some announcements. I want to talk about homework or what we're doing this week. Still even haven't touched upon the actual doing notes yet. Then the next thing I do from there is I said, all right, let's make sure we're on the same page. Can someone tell me what is our notes going to be about today? And they know because I have it on the screen, and that's how they set up their paper. And of course, they tell us what the notes are going to be about today, so we are all same page. These are what our focus is today, and I have an essential question. And then we jump into the notes. So, and if you look at time-wise, I'd probably say we don't actually jump into those notes till about maybe 12, 13 minutes into class. 8 minutes for a warm-up, then for me making announcements, and then we jump into our notes. But if you're missing that first part of it, those first 8, 13 minutes, if you don't plan for that, imagine the chaos that could happen. And then when we're doing notes, once again, I have a whole system for doing notes. Now, if you're a brand new teacher, or if you've been doing this a year or two, you're still trying to figure this out. I mean, I'll 100% honestly, transparency here, I did not feel comfortable being a teacher till about year 7. That's 7 years of struggling. Hopefully you're not that long. Hopefully you could do a lot less time. But there's this learning curve, and it took me longer than most teachers. It took me about 7 years. But finally by year 7, I finally started feeling my cadence. I finally started feeling comfortable in the classroom. And so with you, wherever you're at, develop those systems, right? And if you're year 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're still struggling, that's okay. That is okay. But know what you're working towards. You're working towards developing those cadence, developing those routines, and making those strong. So that way you can stop behavior from it even starting, right? And then when I'm finally into my notes, Once again, the system of notes I have is I have Cornell notes. So students are copying down on the screen. Before, I would just maybe print out something for them and have them follow along, but I realized that was a problem because it's idle hands or the devil's playground, something like that. I think as the saying goes, right? And so if students aren't actually working on anything, then they're more likely to have behavior issues pop up. And so I actually have students copy the notes. And then I have students reflect on the notes. I use something called an aha. They reflect on the notes. So there's a certain pattern, a certain way we do notes as well. And then at the very end, when notes are all done, we summarize the notes. I give them a little bit of time to summarize the notes. And the last thing I finish it off with is I actually have students count their own grades. So they have immediate feedback on how they're doing in class. They have immediate feedback on the grade they just earned for the work that day. So all this goes into students will take notes on the 3 branches of government. So when it comes time for you to do your lesson planning, first thing, big picture, figure out what you want to teach unit-wise. And then the next thing you want to do from there is figure out that certain pattern, the plug-and-play system. What are certain things you're going to do almost in every unit? Give you some examples. If you teach ELA, you're probably going to have vocabulary in almost everything. You're probably going to have some sort of test in almost everything you're doing. You're going to have probably some sort of writing in almost thing you're doing. And so if those are 3 things you're always going to do, standardize those. Make sure they're the same thing over and over. Different content, maybe different writing, different vocabulary words, but how you're doing it, make sure it's the same. And by doing that, it's going to, first of all, it's going to make your life a lot easier, and it's actually make the students' life a lot easier because they know what to expect. You're not spending a day or two explaining the activity. Since you've been doing it all year, they already have it down. You can actually focus on that content part of it. So that's for that. Science. I've been working with a science teacher a little bit. I would say the warm-up would be something like, some sort of vocabulary word, something else, whatever they're doing. If they're doing certain experiments, have them doing on certain days, whatever else they're doing. And so same thing, figure out certain things you're gonna have in every unit and just make sure you put those in there and stick with that format. And now if you realize that format's not working, then of course change it. But try to do that, try to find that cadence. So that's another thing I would do. And then the final thing regarding lesson planning is, so once again, you have your unit and then you plug certain things in and then you find those certain activities. Don't be afraid to try new activities. Find what works. Now, there's certain things, once again, I've been doing this a long time, so I realize there's certain things, activities I do that I like better than others, and certain things that I know the students like better than others and gives me the results I'm looking for. So I keep those. But over the years, I have tried different things and realized this is an epic fail. This is awful, and I no longer use it. And there are certain things that I realize change with time, and so I may not use those as well. But once you find those activities, you have your core. And then when you go into the next year, you already have a good starting point. And then you can try other activities to bring in to that. If you teach history, I got to tell you, one of the things I love is teaching, the magic, teaching to the magic. His name was Mr. Ruffington at one point in time, I think it was. But I love his stuff. For history, those stuff are great for those special activities. So I got a lot from that. I got a lot from my colleagues throughout the years, just picking things up. And that's where you do it. How's that saying go? A good teacher's a good thief. As bad as that sounds, it's somewhat true. You're going to pick things up from other places. The longer you've been doing this, you're going to see more things. And the secret is once you find those items, once you find those things, make sure you keep on to them and make sure you keep a record of it. Try it. If it works, great. If not, no problem, right? You got next year to try to tone it in, next year to kind of reel it in and get it to really, really want it to be at. So try that when you do your lesson planning. Now, with all that said, just know if you ever need any assistance at all with lesson planning, anything else at all, feel free to send me email. I have a whole coaching program. I have my free website on our free course on classroom management. But if you just have like a question that you might need help with or just something to bounce an idea off, please send me an email. I am definitely here for you. And as you can tell, there's the bell, so I got to go. Hey, take care and have a wonderful day.